As we already discussed, White had number of options to confront Najdorf. And for those who wanted to start complications, those who like to analyze very sharp positions, and those who are not shy of sacrificing material at the early stage of the game, bishop g5 or bishop c4 were the best options. Those who wanted tense positions but not immediate sacrifices, with some initiative but without burning all the bridges, f4 was an answer. Those who wanted to play positional chess, trying to maneuver without giving black much of a counterplay, bishop e2 or even g3 and a4. That was a traditional setup for Najdorf. White's options as presented in the beginning of 70s, when a very new idea, highly unusual, that didn't work in accordance with the conventional wisdom, suddenly appeared at stage. Bishop e3. It seems that White is not doing much, because if they wanted to play aggressively, they needed to push f4, e5, or f4, f5, or just to start pushing all the pawns there, f4, g4, g5, or when bishop goes on g5, then f4, queen goes on f3, castle, one knight is sacrificed on f5 or on e6, another one can go on d5. So that's an aggressive setup. Bishop e3 didn't look very positional, because it didn't prepare an immediate short castle, but it also looked too slow for an aggressive approach. It took years and pretty good practical results for White to recognize that this setup, bishop e3 followed by f3, queen d2, long castle, then g4, is almost universal in the Sicilian, because White is strengthening its position in the center. Pawn on e4 is protected, and that's quite important because it limits Black's active options to create counterplay, like b5, b4, pushing knight from c3 and weakening pawn on e4, or even exchange sacrifice after rook c8 and rook takes c3. A lot of these Black's options related to the weakness of the White center at a time when White is trying to mass up its forces to break through in the center or on the king side. While bishop e3, f3 setup creates a solid position in the center, preparing an assault on the king side with g4, g5, h4, h5, and it's a nice combination, a mixture of on one side limiting opponent's options to counterattack, and at the same time preparing a massive launch of pawns advance on the king side. And in fact, when white pawns appears on g5 and h5, it doesn't look slow anymore. And I can share my own experience that it's not very pleasant to see these two pawns are hanging around your king's fortress, and when one pawn moves on g6, then it's getting highly unpleasant. Also, I survived many times, and even won few games, defending with black and creating chance on the queen side. But still, this option with f3 proves to be one of the most effective weapons against almost any variation of Sicilian, even the Paulsen. But let's go back to Najdorf. One of the first games, probably the first game at that level, was Birn Balashov, played in 1971 in Moscow at the Lokin Memorial, and it was a disastrous game for black. And the fact that Yuri Balashov, a very strong GM, couldn't figure out how to develop his pieces normally and create counterplay with black, we think had to warn all other Najdorf players and attract followers from the white side. It didn't happen. It took almost 8 years, and the game played in the qualification match, the game at Dor and Ribli, and the Ribli to be crushed in 22 moves, when the attention actually was brought to bishop e3 followed by knight b3 and after e5, f3, g4 attacking scheme. So let's follow e5, knight b3. Here we don't touch another retreat, knight f3, which is a positional one. It's still quite popular. White has quite decent results, but obviously, you know, it doesn't have the same tension, the same intense fighting spirit as knight b3. So that's why I decided that we are not going to cover it in this series. Also, one comment before we go into all these complications. This line is very, very popular. This bishop e3, call it English attack, is probably one of the most popular and often played line in Sicilian today. That's why, as we speak, some very important games can be played, and many evaluations can change. And that's why I don't want to give the final evaluations. I don't want to give recommendations that you consider to be the absolute perfect one, because this line can be very flexible, and all we can do now by going through different variations is to sort of establish general understanding on what are the ideas used by both sides in this very sharp and complicated line. I try to share my own experience, so that's why many of the games that will be used for the demonstration purpose, they are my own games. I also include those games that, in my view, are quite important, and hopefully you can have this guiding tour. But again, remember, it's a guiding tour, and you have to follow the latest games if you want to play this line in the professional tournaments, because in any tournament you can see strong players employing this line, and evaluation might change, because many players, in fact, are quite happy of playing this position for both sides, and that creates an extra suspense, and that's what's always good about Najdorf and those modern lines. But let's go back to 1971. Bishop e6, queen d2, knight bd7, f3, rook c8. Looked very natural. I mean, that's the move that many generations of Sicilian players made almost without any hesitations. Rook from a8 should go on c8 because it's an open file where rook can be active. But now we know that it's a bit premature, because quite often black could play a bishop e7 castle, then queen c7, and another rook goes on c8. So it's a bit early, and today we all know that. But it took quite some time, and few very painful defeats for black for this lesson to be taught. g4, bishop e7, castle, knight b6. Here Byrne played g5. Again, that's a logical continuation of White's plan. Knight is pushed, and one can hardly criticize Balashev's choice, knight fd7. While today we know that knight h5 was absolutely the best option. Knight is not ideally located there, but it prevents White's advance on the king side, and blocks h-pawn. In fact, today this position is one of the most critical positions in this line, and many games were played. Sometimes you can see a different move order, but it's not important. This construction is very important, and there are still debates whether knight on h5, is good or bad. But we all know that if white pawns are pushed and black cannot stop this advance, then nothing can help black, as we can see in this game. After knight fd7, rook g1, queen c7, we see that black did everything as planned, but after queen g2 before knight d5, it occurred that it's not just dangerous on the king side, it's positionally pretty lousy, because white also occupied the square on d5 and black created no counterplay. After bishop d8, f4, white attack is unstoppable, and all these pluses, all these advantages are for literally nothing, because black has no counterplay. And Balashov played f5. He could have probably played modestly g6, but after rook gf1, f5, we could see that this position is absolutely hopeless for black. It's not just because of the white's advance on the king side. It's just positionally pretty bad itself. f5, g takes f6, exchange on e5, bishop h6, and white has strong attack with equal material, and now rook g8 would be refuted simply by queen sacrifice. So that's one of the ideas, illustrative ideas. King e6, for instance, knight f4 check, and knight d4 with decisive attack, and after king e8, knight e3, and there is nothing black can do to prevent white's decisive attack when all white pieces are now going around black's king. So the rest of the game was quite simple. There was a nice finish, but obviously the game was decided already way before black resigned. Adorian played h4 instead of g5. He recognized that if black had played knight h5 after g5, he could stall white's progress on the king side. So h4 is an idea to play h5 and to prevent black knight appearing on h5. So having both pawns making this progress. Ribley castled. While knight c4 was another plausible option after exchanging on c4, and by the way, that's also important to remember that white bishop on f1 in these lines already developed, because sooner or later black piece, most likely knight, appears on c4, and then bishop from f1 takes it with one move. So that's always nice to remember that sometimes your pieces are already developed and its original position. If another opponent's piece appears somewhere within the reach. So bishop f1 in many lines with this setup, bishop e3, f3, g4, is just waiting for black knight on c4 to be exchanged. And obviously white saves time. Bishop didn't move while black knight played knight d8, d7, b6, c4. So it's a nice exchange, because black lost two tempes before this exchange on c4. And while king was kept on e8, h5 could have been met by h6, while g5 by knight h5. That was probably the best option. Also, castle was not yet losing, but it required black some very aggressive play, because they were already on the verge of disaster. Now, after h5, d5 was an option. Adorian recommended bishop takes b6 and thought white was winning. That was Adorian's line. Bingo. He just missed. Bishop takes f6, and black is already on top, because after knight c5, bishop g5, this line. White has lost. G5 is stronger immediately, but still after d4, we look at this position. It's not as easy as it looks, because white can win the material, but the end game is not as clear, because black wins pawn on h5, and then having one pawn like h pawn with no rooks left on the white side, it's always very, very complicated. So d5 was a chance, and it's another good illustrative example. When you are in trouble in such positions, I mean, you can't sit and wait and die without any fight, so you have to complicate things and really miss this moment. d5 could create chances, while after knight c4, white attack also develops quite easily. g5 and rook g1, and here, while position is quite bad, the best practical chance was f5. It looks suicidal. Of course, you don't want to open lines on the king side, but at least it could force white to do something more dramatic, because after g6, h6, sacrifice on h6, knight f6, g7, rook e8, there is no immediate win for white. It looks very dangerous. Probably white is winning, but at least it could have forced white to be more inventive. While in the game, after queen c7, g6, rook c8, then it's all elementary. White doesn't need any fantasy to find bishop h6. And after bishop f6, it's a sacrifice, and queen g2 with inevitable queen g7 mate. So really resigned. Just 22 moves. Quite an impressive victory for Dorian. And while we talk now, I think that maybe we can say that knight c4 was a decisive mistake, and put it here a question mark. Although I still think that maybe after d5, g5, you can find an improvement. But what we know is that black had to find something different, new ways, because just to play traditionally, as in many other Sicilian lines, didn't work out. And of course, black immediately questioned their ninth move, rook c8, and were looking for more sophisticated setups to create counter chances.